Welcome to my podcast.
Picture this. You are sitting at a really crowded dinner table,
Okay.
and you ask your friend to pass, like, that plate. In English, you've done your job, you pointed with your words, and boom, you got the plate.
Right. Simple enough.
But if you were speaking Spanish and you just reached for, like, a direct translation of the word that without even thinking about it, you might have actually just failed a subconscious geometry test.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because to speak Spanish correctly in that specific scenario, you can't just know the vocabulary. I mean, you literally have to map out the exact spatial coordinates of, everyone in the room.
Which is wild. And that is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So we have a really fascinating linguistic guide to Spanish demonstratives on our hands today. And our mission here is to sort of shortcut your path to being truly well-informed on this topic. Because what looks on the surface like this dry, kind of dusty grammar rule, just memorizing a few words for this and that, it's actually a fascinating window into how a language fundamentally categorizes physical space.
Yeah.
How it maps out time, and even, as we'll see later, how it signals really complex human emotions.
It's honestly a complete cognitive shift. I mean, if we establish a baseline here, as English speakers, we live in a very straightforward, almost two-dimensional linguistic world.
Two-dimensional, okay.
Yeah. We generally care about two things when we point at objects. We care about distance, meaning, this versus that. And we care about number, meaning these versus those.
Right. Single, plural, close, far.
Exactly. That is our entire matrix. We really don't have to think very hard about it.
No, we don't.
But Spanish introduces this highly nuanced three-way system. It literally demands that you, as the speaker, constantly assess exactly where things are in relation to yourself and, crucially, in relation to the person you are actually talking to.
But I have to ask, why do we even need a three-way matrix? I mean, close to me and far from me really seems like it covers all the necessary bases, right?
You'd think so.
Why introduce the extra cognitive load of, constantly measuring everyone's relative distance?
Well, it comes down to a linguistic concept called deixis.
Deixis.
Yeah, deixis.
Yeah.
Spatial deixis is the specific mechanism of how we anchor ourselves in the physical world using language. English is, it's somewhat self-centered in its deixis.
Self-centered how?
It's mostly about the speaker's perspective. It's all about me.
Right.
But Spanish divides the world into three distinct zones, which forces the speaker to be highly aware of the social dynamic.
Interesting.
So the first zone is called cercanía, which just means closeness to the speaker. This is your here zone.
Okay.
The words used are este, esta, estos, or estas, depending on the gender and number of the noun.
So to visualize this for you listening, if you are, say, holding a coffee mug right now, you are physically interacting with it. It is inside your personal bubble.
Exactly. You would say este vaso or esta taza. The object is strictly anchored to you. And that part is very similar to English.
Right. That's just this mug.
Yeah. But the second zone is where the system splits. It is called distancia media, or medium distance. And this zone is specifically anchored to the listener.
To the listener?
Yes. It is the there near you. The demonstratives for this are es, esa, esos, or esos.
Oh, okay. So think about the listener right now. If you were sitting across the desk from your boss and your boss has a pen sitting right next to their notebook,
Right.
You wouldn't just use a generic floating word for that. You have to specifically use a word that acknowledges, that thing in your territory.
Precisely. You would say, pásame esa pluma. Pass me that pen.
Wow.
You are linguistically recognizing that the object is in their sphere of influence. It requires you to calculate their physical position before you even open your mouth.
It almost feels like an embedded form of politeness, right? Or at least spatial awareness. You literally can't just ignore the other person's physical reality.
You can't.
But you mentioned a three-way system. So if we have my zone and your zone, what is the third one?
So the third zone is called lejanía. This translates to distance or, being far away. And the key here is that it means far away from both the speaker and the listener.
Oh, from both of us.
Yes. It is the definitive over there. And the words are aquel, aquellos, or aqueas.
So if we are still sitting at that desk, you and me, and we both look out the window and see, I don't know, a red car parked all the way down at the end of the block.
Right. It is completely outside of your zone and it's outside of my zone. It exists in a entirely separate distant space.
Okay.
So you would say, mira aquel coche. Look at that car over there. You aren't just identifying the car. You are explicitly coding that vast physical distance into the very fabric of the sentence.
You know, I was reading through the source guide for this, and it really made me think of a game of catch.
Oh, a game of catch. I like that.
Yeah, because English only really cares if I have the ball, which is this ball, or if the ball is anywhere else in the entire world, which is just that ball.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be right there in your glove, or it could be like a home run flying into the next parking lot, and English just lazily calls it that ball.
That's so true.
But Spanish forces you to map the exact geometry of the game. Like Spanish cares if I have the ball, which is este. It cares if you have the ball, which is es. And it has a completely separate category for when the ball is way out in left field, which is equal.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. You're constantly triangulating the social and physical space between you, me, and the object.
Right.
But this exact triangulation sets up a very notorious trap for people trying to learn the language.
Oh, right, the trap.
Yeah.
I want to spend a minute on this because the source material highlights it as just a massive stumbling block.
It is a huge stumbling block.
Okay.
And it happens because of how our brains process patterns.
Right.
When you start learning Spanish, you learn the basic rules of gender very early on. Masculine words usually end in O, like el chico for the boy. And feminine words usually end in A, like la chica. So when an English speaker naturally wants to point and say, this boy, their brain logically reaches for a demonstrative ending in O.
Right. They want to say esto chico. It just feels completely right. It matches the pattern we were taught on day one.
But it is completely wrong.
Ouch.
Yeah. The masculine singular forms for these spatial zones actually end in E. It is este chico, ese chico, aquel chico.
Wow.
The trap is so common because it actively defies the foundational phonetic pattern that beginners lean on to just survive in the language.
See, I have to stop you there and push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
If the language has established that O means masculine, why on earth would the masculine demonstratives end in E? Like, why set a trap like that?
It's a fair question.
And more importantly, if the masculine words end in E, what happens to the words that actually do end in O, like esto? Because every high school Spanish student knows the word esto exists. I mean, I hear native speakers say it all the time.
That is the perfect question. And it brings us to a really elegant mechanism in the language, which is the neutral forms.
Neutral forms.
This is where we shift away from concrete gendered nouns into the realm of the abstract and the unknown.
Ooh, the unknown.
Yeah. Spanish has three special neutral demonstratives. Esto, meaning this thing. Eso, meaning that thing. And aquello, meaning that distant thing.
Wait, so esto does exist, but it's not masculine.
Correct. It is strictly neutral, and there is an unbreakable fundamental rule regarding these three words.
Which is?
They never change for gender or number. And crucially, they never ever go next to a noun.
Oh.
Saying esto libro isn't just a slight mistake. It is linguistically illegal. The grammar simply won't accept it.
Wait, if I cannot put these words next to a noun, what function are they actually serving in a sentence? Like, what are they doing?
You use them when you are dealing with an object whose name or gender you do not know yet. It is the language's way of allowing you to point at a mystery.
Oh, I see. It's like a linguistic blank tile in Scrabble. When you don't have the specific gendered piece you need to complete the grammar puzzle, esto just slots in perfectly to hold the space.
Exactly.
So imagine you are wandering through a bustling market in Madrid, right? And you see some bizarre spiky fruit.
Right.
You have absolutely no idea what it's called, so you definitely do not know if it is a masculine or feminine noun. You can't use este or esta, so you just point at it and ask, ¿Qué es esto? What is this thing?
Exactly. Esto safely covers your lack of knowledge.
That's super practical.
It really is. The language prioritizes distinguishing between a known, specific object and an unknown entity. It basically forces the speaker to admit they don't know what they're looking at.
Whoa.
But these neutral forms do a lot more heavy lifting than just pointing at weird fruit.
Oh.
They're also essential for pointing at abstract concepts.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about a situation where a colleague suggests a wildly complicated, just terrible plan for a project.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Right. You might respond by saying, eso es imposible.
Yeah.
That is impossible.
Okay, let's unpack why you use eso there. You are using the neutral that because you aren't pointing to a physical object on a desk.
Right.
A plan isn't masculine or feminine. You are pointing to an entire situation. You're pointing to a concept.
Yes. You are encapsulating a complex abstract idea into a single neutral pointer.
That's brilliant.
And once you realize that these words can point to abstract ideas, it reveals something much deeper about human cognition.
Like what?
Well, if we can use spatial words to point at invisible concepts, what else can we point to that isn't physical?
This is exactly what I wanted to get into next. If we are breaking the bounds of physical space, where else do we go? The source material gets into how these words map onto time, and it's fascinating.
It is literally a form of linguistic time travel.
Time travel, I love it.
Yeah. We just spent all this time talking about spatial deixis, pointing through 3 zones of physical space. Now we enter temporal deixis, which is pointing through time. The Spanish language takes that exact same 3-way spatial geometry we just learned, and it maps it flawlessly onto the timeline of your life.
That implies that humans conceptualize time as a physical space that we actively move through.
Exactly.
So how does the close to me zone, the cercania, translate to the timeline?
The here zone translates to the present or the current time.
Okay.
The cognitive logic is that the present moment is the time you are actively holding in your hands right now. It is in your personal bubble.
Right, because you're living it.
So you use este or esta. If you want to tell someone this week has been crazy, you say, esta semana ha sido loca.
Yeah.
You use esta because you are currently living inside of that week. You are physically anchored to it.
That makes a lot of intuitive sense. The present is the space I'm currently occupying.
Yes.
So what happens to the middle distance, the there zone near the listener, the ease and essa?
That becomes the near past or the near future.
Okay.
It is a time that is close enough to clearly see, but you aren't currently holding it. So let's say you are reminiscing about a party you went to like a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
You would say, ese día nos divertimos mucho. That day, we had a lot of fun. You use ese because the memory is still relatively fresh. It's still hanging around in the medium distance of your mind.
It's not right now, but it's not ancient history either.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the third zone, Leania, the over there out in left field. What does aqua look like in the time machine?
Aquel and aquela represent the distant past.
Oh, wow.
This is specifically reserved for memories that feel far removed from your current reality.
Okay, give me a visual for that.
If you are, say, sitting by a fire, talking about when you were a little kid decades ago, you would say, aquellos años de mi infancia, those years of my childhood.
Aquellos años. There is an inherent nostalgia built right into the grammar itself.
There really is.
The vast physical distance of aquel perfectly mirrors the vast psychological distance of the memory. It stops feeling like a dry list of grammar rules,
Yeah.
and you start to see how deeply intuitive it is. Close physical space equals present time. Far physical space equals distant childhood memories.
It is incredibly poetic when you look at the mechanics, but the spatial pointing doesn't just stop at time.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. It also extends into the literal text of a conversation. Linguists call this the anaphoric value.
Okay, let's ground that term anaphoric value. What does that actually mean in plain English?
It is basically treating the words in a conversation as if they were physical objects hanging in the air.
Hanging in the air. Okay.
It's like a linguistic lasso.
Yeah.
You are throwing a loop around a sentence that someone just spoke into existence, pulling it back to you and commenting on it.
Yeah, okay, give me an example of the lasso in action.
Let's say I tell you, Juan didn't come to school today, and you want to react to that entire statement. You can lasso it using our trusty neutral eso. You say, eso me preocupa. That worries me.
So I am grabbing your entire sentence, Juan didn't come to school, right out of the air, and I am pointing at it with eso.
Exactly. You can also point forward.
Point forward.
Yeah. If you say, I am going to buy a house, I can respond with, esa es una gran idea. That is a great idea.
Oh, I see.
I use the feminine esa because it is pointing forward to the feminine noun idea, but the function is exactly the same. I am linking my reaction directly to the statement you just made. The language forms an inviolable tether between our sentences.
I think it's brilliant how robust the system is. I mean, you use the exact same toolkit to point at a coffee mug, to point at your childhood, and to point at a sentence floating in the air.
It's extremely versatile.
But there's one more layer to this of the source's outline.
Yes.
We know what words to use for space, time, and text, but does it matter where we physically put the word in the sentence?
It changes everything.
Really?
Yeah. And this brings us to the final and perhaps most emotionally expressive mechanism of demonstratives, syntactic position.
Okay, so this is where we get into the emotional tone. We are moving from the cold, hard geometry of the words to the actual vibe they create when you shuffle them around?
Let's look at the mechanics of English first to see why this is so striking.
Okay.
In English, demonstratives are rigidly locked into place before the noun. You have to say this car. You cannot say the car this. It breaks the language. It just sounds like gibberish.
Right. English word order is a very strict master in that regard.
And Spanish has a very similar standard mode. It is called the pronominal position, meaning the pointer goes before the noun.
Makes sense.
This is the neutral, everyday, completely factual way to speak. If you want to introduce your uncle to a friend, you say, Este hombre es mi tío. This man is my uncle.
Right.
It conveys the information perfectly with zero hidden agenda.
No drama, just geometry, este hombre. But Spanish allows you to break that rigid structure, right?
Yes, it does. Spanish has what is called the post-nominal position.
Post-nominal, after the noun.
Exactly. This is when you deliberately choose to place the demonstrative after the noun. Now, mechanically, if you do this, you cannot leave the front of the noun empty. You have to add a definite article, el, la, los, or las in front, to balance the phrase.
Let me make sure I'm tracking the mechanics here. So instead of saying este hombre, which is just this man,
Right.
you shift the word order and say el hombre este, which literally translates to something like the man, this one.
Exactly. And the moment you make that shift, the moment you push the pointer to the back of the noun, you dramatically alter the emotional nuance.
Oh, wow.
It is no longer a neutral statement. It adds expressivity, irony, sarcasm, or emotional distance.
But why? What is the actual mechanism making it sound sarcastic? Like, why does moving a word change the feeling?
By pushing the word to the end of the phrase, you physically delay the pointing action in the sentence. You force the listener to hear the man, and you leave them hanging for a split second before you hit them with this one. That tiny delay naturally creates a dramatic or sarcastic pause.
Oh, that is so cool. That completely changes the framing. So if I say, el hombre este es mi tío, I'm not warmly introducing him anymore.
Not at all.
It suddenly carries this slightly annoyed or disdainful tone. It turns this man into this guy right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Imagine you're at a family gathering, and that same uncle is telling a really embarrassing, entirely untrue story about you to a room full of people.
Oh, I can picture it.
You might cross your arms, roll your eyes, point your thumb at him, and say, El hombre este, this guy right here.
Huh.
It creates a linguistic arm's length between you and the subject. You are physically distancing yourself from him with the grammar itself.
It's wild that a simple grammatical shift does the heavy lifting of tone. You are literally throwing shade with syntax.
That's exactly what it is.
But the sources point out it isn't always a negative vibe, right? It can be used for positive emotion, too.
Definitely. It can also show a very strong enthusiastic preference.
Okay.
By delaying the pointer, you're essentially putting an exclamation mark on it. If you are looking at a lineup of options or talking about someone you are deeply infatuated with, you might say, Me encanta la chica esta.
I really like this girl. But with that delay, it implies this particular girl above all others. It forces the listener to really focus on exactly who you are pointing at.
Right. You are saying, I am talking about this one specifically, and I have very strong feelings about it.
The amount of power packed into a tiny shift in syntax is incredible. It shows how much raw personality is baked into the rules themselves, if you just understand the mechanisms of how to wield them.
Absolutely.
So to recap the journey for you listening today, we've covered some serious ground.
We really have.
We started by breaking out of the lazy 2D pointing system of English, and we stepped into the highly aware 3D spatial zones of Spanish with este, es, and equal. We unpacked the trap of the masculine endings, and we learned how to use the neutral blank tiles esto, iso, aquello to point at complex abstract ideas and completely unknown objects.
And we also explored how that exact same three-way spatial map allows you to time travel, categorizing memories from the current week all the way back to your distant childhood.
Right. And finally, we broke down the mechanics of the sarcasm shift, learning how dragging a single word to the end of a phrase creates a dramatic pause that can throw shade or show intense enthusiasm.
If we step back and look at the whole picture we've explored today, I think the main cognitive takeaway is that learning a language isn't just about finding a direct one-to-one translation for the vocabulary you already use.
It's much deeper than that.
It is about adopting a completely different framework for categorizing reality. Spanish forces you to constantly reevaluate space, time, and your relationships with the people and objects around you.
It literally changes how you mentally map out the world. which brings us to a final thought we want to leave you with today. When you are out in the world today, walking down the street, sitting in a coffee shop, or looking out your office window, I want you to consciously look at an object that is far away from you.
Right.
Look at a building on the horizon or a car parked way down the block. Notice how your English-speaking brain naturally just lumps that distant thing into the exact same over there category as the pen sitting on the other side of your desk.
It's all just that.
Exactly. It's just a
Uh,
generic that. Do you feel the limitation of that binary switch? Or can you start to feel the usefulness, the sheer accuracy of having a dedicated distant third option?
it's a great question.
Can you feel the psychological need for an equal in your life? Notice how often your native language limits your perception of distance, and consider how adopting a little bit of that Spanish mindset might just expand your horizons.
Very well said.
Until next time, keep pointing out the fascinating things in your world.